Hello and welcome to Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. Today, our special guest is T.R. Ludwig of Brooklyn Solar Canopy Company. And I was looking at him on the internet and it looks like he does a lot more stuff too. So instead of me fumbling around, giving an introduction that's really long and I don't know him as well as he knows himself. So, hey, T.R. Ludwig, what's happening? And let's know what you're up to and what you do and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Sean, thanks for having me on here. My name's T.R. Ludwig. I'm CEO, co-founder of Brooklyn Solar Works, also helped found Brooklyn Solar Canopy Company, and am also the co-founder of a electric boat startup, Emo. Yeah.
Awesome.
But my day job is definitely CEO of Brooklyn Solar Works. And we're a residential, small commercial, kind of urban solar company based in New York City, in the borough of Brooklyn, of course. And right now we are based in Gowanus, Brooklyn, kind of central Brooklyn. I have about 80 folks working for us on the install, sales, marketing, design, engineering front, and been around for about 10 years in just operating in New York City. That's what we focus on.
Oh, that's really cool. How come you don't have some kind of hardcore Brooklyn accent? I thought Brooklyn people are supposed to do that.
It comes over time. You also have to be born here usually. And I was not. I was born up in Massachusetts in a town called Lexington.
Oh, okay.
So bit of a transplant, but this will be my 17th year here.
Great.
So
yeah, I'm going to be up in Massachusetts next week. So let's talk about some of the other stuff. I know that our main topic wasn't going to be electric boats, but that just kind of caught my attention. So what's up with the electric boats?
Yeah, it's an interesting development. You know, I've always been kind of interested in boats.
Yeah, I have a sailboat.
Oh, nice. Cool. Yeah. And so a few years ago, I bought a property in Long Island that has water access. And so just been watching boats out there for quite some time. And my father and I would go boating quite a bit. He's a sailor and motorboater. He passed a few years ago, and he and I had been working on a project to electrify his motorboat. And in the process of doing that, I got really into it and realized that it was something that was very analogous to the solar business, similar equipment and components, and that the opportunity in electrifying pleasure boating was just so nascent and untouched that I said, why not check it out? And happened to meet a great business partner who is also a certified boat captain and just hardcore sailor as well. And so he and I kind of helped get ourselves up and running and became dealers of a number of different electric motors, e-propulsion, Torqeedo, Elco. And so we're also very interested in high horsepower electric outboards. And there's not a lot of those out there, but there's a few vendors of those, and we're dealers of their motors as well.
I remember when I got my sailboat, I wanted to get an electric motor, but it was, a while ago. We're talking probably going on 15 years ago. And so it would be super expensive, and it was so heavy, it sinks your boat pretty much if you wanted to have any distance on it.
Yeah.
And then my brother, he had a two-stroke up in Alaska, this kind of large skiff. And we were trying to figure out what it would take to electrify that. And it would be 10 times more than the boat's worth or something like that, And so hopefully you're getting the weight down and the price down and all that. And I know that just with vehicles and stuff too, we're getting to that point where with EVs, they're going to be cheaper than ICE cars, internal combustion engine cars, coming up sometime in the future, or maybe even right now in some applications. So,
yeah, it's interesting because a lot of people have been in your situation and now they're coming back to it and realizing that actually for basic functions, it's already there. The weight of these things is extremely light. 1 to 5 horsepower outboard motor can really move you around if you're just looking to get out to, in a tender situation or just motor out of the harbor or something like that.
Yeah, with a sailboat, it takes us a couple of years to go through a tank of gas because all we're using the gas for is to just go out. And the biggest problem we have with our boat is fuel problems because there's old diesel in there.
That's exactly why a lot of sailors are adopting electric, is because they just don't want to deal with gas anymore. It's just such a pain.
Yeah, there's even a way where you can charge the battery by spinning the propeller backwards. So when somebody's sailing out there across the ocean, the propeller can be charging the battery. That's been around for a while.
Yeah, and there's some of the manufacturers have that feature in there. It's like hydro regen.
Yeah,
So
pretty
yeah,
cool.
so it's very cool. Obviously, we're very interested in powering all of this with solar. So that pairs nicely with solar canopy company that we run here. So we're developing kind of a docking solution for,
Oh, really?
yeah, so no renderings quite yet, but that's on the roadmap for probably the end of this year. We should have something, but it's a lot of fun. It's, a bit of a hobby, but also very cool.
Cool. Yeah, so that was a good segue over to what your main gig is. And it looks like you have two different companies, Brooklyn Solar Works and Brooklyn Solar Canopy Company.
Mhm.
What's the difference?
Yeah, so Brooklyn Solar Works is a classic sort of turnkey installer. So we sell, market, design, engineer, build, and maintain solar systems here in New York City, mostly in urban environments, pretty densely packed. Although we're doing more sort of suburban city work in Queens and Staten Island. Part of the product suite that we offer is a canopy solution, and that canopy was developed with myself, two of my other co-founders, and a few other folks we collaborated with in the city. And that previously was within Brooklyn Solar Works, and then it became quite popular, and it solved probably one of the bigger challenges here in New York City in a really efficient way. And so we decided to spin that off as a product itself, and we created Brooklyn Solar Canopy Company to obviously sell Brooklyn Solar Works canopies, but open it up to other installers that wanted to buy the equipment. We had gotten a bunch of recognition, design awards, and really kind of pushed this product into something very few solar products get to enjoy, with the design community here in the city and architecture community. So the canopy, it's been a hallmark of both Brooklyn Solar Works and Brooklyn Solar Canopy. And then it's also opened us up to selling in other parts of the country. So we've sold everywhere from California to Utah, Tennessee, North Carolina, up to Maine, and out to Turks and Caicos.
One thing that I noticed is like I had a friend about 18 years ago, maybe something like that. There was some really good California rebates. And there was this rooftop, and they got, it was like $3 a watt or something like that, plus a 30% tax credit. And he's like, I got to figure out how to put this solar on top of this roof that's full of air conditioners. And he made some kind of steel thing that went up over the air conditioners and all that. And this rack system costs more than a solar system would cost today, just for the rack, like easily would cost more. So it seems like there was sort of a market for that, and then it kind of died out, probably because, it just doesn't make sense to spend more on the rack than it does on the PV system itself in a lot of applications. However, I did some consulting for some people in Beirut over there in the Middle East and Lebanon, and they were doing it. And I thought, oh, maybe it's because they can bring the price down because they don't have all these same rules and regulations that we do over
Mhm.
here. And it was just easier for them to do it. So perhaps you've figured out a way to make it so it's feasible to do something like that here. And I know that your canopies, just from looking at your website and stuff, that some of them are for rooftop. And so that's probably what kind of a similar application to what I was just talking about. And
Mhm.
you're in an urban area and there's like lots of stuff on roofs, and how are you going to put solar up on those roofs? And then
Yeah.
also I saw that you have a bunch of them too that are sort of like little carports and with EV chargers and stuff on them. So it was kind of neat. And so it looks like your canopies, just to kind of describe them to people, are made out of aluminum. And it
Mhm.
looks like the one that you put up on the roof is sort of like four upside down V's on the corners. And then it supports the structure that way. And then the one that goes on the ground is like maybe a little bit of a right side up V. Maybe you could explain it better. And it has sort of more of or like a truss type of structure to it. You're probably better at explaining that than I am.
Yeah, so the first design you described is what we call our A-frame canopy. That canopy is sort of the signature Brooklyn Solar Canopy, first edition, if you will. That was designed specifically with urban rooftops in mind, brownstones and row houses typically are about 15 to 20 feet wide. And so we built a modular design that allowed us to basically create effectively the same product every single time with a little bit of variation in the middle so that we can kind of work with all these different types of rooftops. Wouldn't surprise you here in New York City with 150-year-old buildings, the roofs are generally not terribly level. So being able to like work with what the roof gives you here in New York City, which can be pretty wild, is an important part of the product. So we built that product specifically for New York City. And then as we started to go national, we re-engineered it for various wind loads and snow loads throughout the country. That design is pretty radical, whether you like it or not. We obviously love it. We think it's very futuristic and kind of paints a hopeful picture of how cool something can be on someone's rooftop. For more historic areas and that kind of thing, it does clash a little bit. And so we run into sometimes issues there, but like the bottom line is it's an award-winning design that's been recognized from Architecture magazine and Interior Design magazine. And I mean, there's just quite a laundry list of accolades that we've gotten on it. So it's not for everybody, certainly outside of New York City for sure. And a lot of people that are into modern design, they're quite appealing and are interested in using it, both as a carport, obviously rooftop, and then even like a backyard application there.
So how high up does it go over the roof?
Well, so that part of the genesis of the product was to comply with the fire codes. And so in order to comply with the fire codes, you need to be able to raise the solar system up 9 feet in the air. And that's
Over the
for
roof. Okay.
over the roof. Yeah. So that's for a New York City fireman to swing an axe, a 6-foot fireman with like a 3-foot
Uh-huh.
axe.
Can you explain what part of the fire code? Because I mean, most solar is sitting on the roof.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a lot of this has to do with the clear path requirements
Oh, so
within.
you don't need the pathways, you mean? Is that?
Well, you do need them. And if you were to cover the roof, you wouldn't have them if you just went flush mount to the roof. And so if you raise up the solar panels, then you provide like the maximum clear path, you open up the entire rooftop.
Oh,
And
interesting. So for like we have these different rules for like 4-foot pathways and stuff like that. And so you don't need to really do that, or you could just consider it a pathway because it's 9 feet high. Yeah.
yeah, so in the city, it's even more restrictive. It's 6 feet.
Oh,
So
okay.
the
Yeah, New York City has all kinds
wide
of weird
corridor,
requirements.
6 foot wide and 9 foot tall corridor from the front of the building to the back of the building.
Ah,
So that, on a 6 foot wide requirement on a 15-foot wide building, you're carving into over half the requirement there. So like generally people were getting very small systems, but as we developed the canopy further, we were able to get like much larger solar systems on the roof of something that would normally be, a 2 or 3 kW system. Now we can get 10 kW
great.
on the small one. So the other nice part about that is that it can kind of scale infinitely lengthwise. So like there's a width of the building, but that building could be very long. And so all we have to do is just keep adding trusses, adding more A-frame modules to it, if you will. And so you can build pretty large systems. The other component, as you pointed out, is that like this does get over a lot of the HVAC and just the junk on the roof.
Yeah.
There's quite a bit of that that's accumulated here in New York City. And so because roof space is such a premium, being able to elevate above that and still keep the mechanicals on the roof make a lot of sense. And people are doing that a lot with heat pumps. They'll even hang them on our canopy A-frames
It
where
gives you extra room to mount stuff. Yeah.
exactly.
And I imagine the shading of all the equipment makes the equipment last longer.
Yeah, exactly. It does work quite well for that purpose. Previously, they put in big steel dunnage like across the parapets. And that's just, again, another big steel job. You need a big crane and that kind of thing. So like with the canopy, we also had a key design criteria being able to make it easy to install that didn't involve cranes. And so I'd say about 90% of our canopy jobs, we're not using a crane. We're just bringing the component pieces and components up on their own, and they're carryable, 40, 50 pound members. So it's not something that's requires 10 people to carry. So we'll either hoist those or carry them up, or use an elevator if it's available, of course. But, it's modular in that sense too. So it's not this big monolithic thing, and we're not welding on site. All of it bolts together once we get it up there. So we've designed it to be as much of kind of erector set as possible. So it's easy to install also. That's the other benefit. Whoever the folks are in Beirut or your buddy out in California, like, I bet you it took more than a day for them to
Oh, sure. Yeah.
collect.
They had to design it and figure out how it works and all that. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And if they're welding on site, that can be pretty hairy sometimes. So all of it's prefabricated, pre-sized, and we deliver it and install it in a day.
That's pretty cool. How do you
Mhm.
attach to the roof usually? I guess just kind of all different ways, I'd imagine.
Yeah. So, there's a number of different attachments. Generally, we're attaching to like wood roof rafters and wood sheathing, a retrofit of a brownstone. That we have a very heavy duty track that we leg bolt into the roof, waterproof and seal around the connection points there. And then that track has a sort of a top flange. And then there's sort of a duckbill fitting that fits right on top. It's a clevis that fits right on top of that flange. And then we bolt through it. So it's a very strong connection. And generally that's our main method of connection. But depending on the roof type, there might be a concrete roof or something like that, or we're mounting to a parapet. And so we'll usually use Hilti connections for that. So, we tried a bunch of different types, and those are kind of the ones that we've settled on.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So is most of your business the rooftop canopy, or how much of your business is the carport type of canopy here on the ground?
Yeah. So in New York City, it's almost entirely rooftop. We started doing some carports. The reason carports are behind is because the zoning in New York City was pretty restrictive to them for a long time. New York City just adopted some new zoning rules that have opened things up quite a bit for carports. And so we've started going down that road, literally. The thing about carports is that it's kind of a different deal. You have to have the right zone, of course. You'd have to have someone that could actually use it to charge if they wanted to use it as a true carport. So it becomes a little bit more involved. We like those projects because they're fun and we love EVs. So we want to make sure that we're developing that. But yeah, we're primarily doing all rooftop canopies. I'd say it's at least 90 to 95% there. And then we also do tilt racks, which are pipe rack systems. We use Hollander clamps, Schedule 40 piping to build up a pipe rack that we then build a smaller solar system. Anywhere from, call it 10 to 15 panels is usually what we would call a tilt rack. And then beyond that, if we're doing something larger, usually it's a canopy.
Great. So like a pipe rack, that's kind of something that's been around for a while that different manufacturers are using and all that.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
and just using plumbing pipe pretty much. And it gets engineered and you can do it that way as long as, the engineer has to sign off on it. And I
Yeah.
noticed too that you have like the UL. Which UL are you going for?
Oh, on the canopy?
Yeah.
I want to say it was 1731 or something like that.
Is it a 2703?
Yeah. It's basically, like the bottom and grounding so that,
Yeah.
which we thought was important. There's a number of other companies out there that just do canopies and they don't bother, but this is such a product that we felt like we really needed to make sure that we went through all the right
Great.
channel. Yeah.
We interrupt you for a very important announcement. Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast has been brought to you by Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. That's right, Sean White is sponsoring his own podcast, and he wants to remind you to go check out some of his classes. You can go to SolarSean, that's solar, SEAN.com, and then click on the links to check out his classes. You can check out his heat spring classes, and you can also hire him to teach classes for you, like at your company, something like that. Now back to the show. And then also you're on the NYSEIA, so that's New York Solar Energy Industry Association. You're the treasurer, I guess, so you're on the board.
Yep.
And also, too, since you're in New York City, I hear that it's crazy over there figuring out like what code you're on and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of difficult to do business. I don't know what version of the NEC they're on, but it's at least 10 years behind, right? Is it
Yeah. They're on a version of 2008.
2008 NEC? And so
Yeah.
right now we're in 2024. So what is that, 16 years? And
Yeah.
any time when they're going to change? And I guess,
Well, yeah, I mean, they've discussed it many times, and they recently have said that they're going to go move up to, I think, the 2020.
uh-huh. So they're going to just make a big jump, a 12-year jump.
Make a big jump. Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, it's ironic because now all these other UL standards are to move into things that may not require rapid shutdown and all these other sort
Yeah.
of.
So like 2008 doesn't have rapid shutdown, but did they make some amendments to include rapid shutdown, I'd imagine?
No,
Oh,
so
so there's
they,
no rapid shutdown requirements in the
yeah,
city.
which makes it confusing because obviously, NYSERDA requires that on various things. So it's a little bit of a tightrope here in New
Uh,
York City. Like there's stuff, I mean, obviously we can comply with either. It doesn't really matter to us. We just gotta
uh-huh.
work with municipalities and yeah, it's a classic, what you would think it would be like to deal with the New York City Department of Buildings and New York City Fire Department.
I would just go in there with a thick accent and threaten people. That's the
Yeah.
way.
There you go. We should have hired you as an expediter.
Yeah. And you also mentioned NYSERDA. And what does that stand for? New York State Energy Research and Development.
There you
Does
go.
that sound
Yeah.
right?
So New York State.
And they give you the rebates and things like that, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. So they're like sort of the clean energy office here in New York. They support all sorts of clean energy programs, energy efficiency, that kind of thing. And of course, solar is one of the main programs that they run. And that's been extremely successful. We've deployed well over $1 billion of subsidies to solar projects, both residential, small commercial, utility scale, the whole thing.
Wow, that's a lot. Billion.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And there's some more that's on the table. New York has been extremely progressive in terms of their solar policies. Of course, we'd like to make them even more progressive, but it's hard to look at what happened in California and complain about what's going on in New York.
Oh yeah, with the net metering three. Yeah, the thing that I don't like about that too is it just quick changes. Like things need to be more gradual.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it was kind of a tragedy to see what happened there. And I can't imagine that anyone from the solar business was predicting it was going to be a net positive. So just a shame to see that go down, and a warning shot to other prolific solar states that are doing well and humming along. Like we got to be constantly defending net metering and the policies that are helping us to grow our business.
Yeah. So also in New York too, we have the headquarters of NABCEP. And so NABCEP headquarters is upstate there. In fact, I was on the NABCEP exam committee some years back, and I think they had an office that was right next to NYSERDA's office. I think we went in there, it's been a long time.
Mhm.
And so I noticed too that you have the NABCEP PV technical sales certification.
Yeah, it was one of the first to get it.
That's funny because I was one of the first two. I remember that I was teaching these classes and I wanted to be the first one. And so it was the first NABCEP test too that you could take online. So at that time, you were going into these big rooms with all these people and they only met every 6 months. And if you didn't pass the test, you had to wait 6 months. Or I knew one guy that he just forgot to fill out the bubbles, but he had to wait 6 months. And so I wonder if we should go back and compare our numbers and see if who was first.
Yeah, yeah. I remember, I think I was the second batch or something. I
Uh,
couldn't get into the first one.
Yeah, I remember that I was teaching a class somewhere remote. And so, like, as soon as I got home the next morning, I went and took the exam at some place at some testing center in Oakland. So
Yeah. Nice.
that's pretty cool. But yeah, anybody out there too? I have PV technical sales, practice exams and a class and all that kind of stuff for NABCEP. And so to qualify for that, you have some experience requirements and things like that that you could find out at the NABCEP website. And I always tell people that if they want to know where to buy solar, to go to the NABCEP website to find the people. And so they'll find your name there. There's like a locator, and they
Mhm.
could find all the certified people, and they can look up PV technical sales, and they'll find your name and your address and how to get a hold of you there. And there's so many people out there that are sending me emails every day trying to sell me leads that probably don't know anything about solar. And
You too, huh?
yeah, some people
Yeah.
are just like giving the industry a bad reputation. And so I always recommend that they go to the NABCEP website, and that's a good way to find an installer
Yeah.
and a salesperson and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a big deal. Like we support all our folks here at Brooklyn Solar Works with trying to go for NABCEP certifications, either just entry level. And if there's someone that's maybe not necessarily specific, someone who's just in the business, very interested in it, we'll support them there. If it's an installer, help them try and work their way through to become a certified installer, technical sales. Like it's a really good credential to have out there. And I think increasingly more important, right? With just kind of the massive growth of solar, also the massive growth of unscrupulous solar
Yeah.
companies, unfortunately. And we're a really big proponent of making sure people know what they're getting and standing behind the product. So important part. I'm not sure if you've talked with many Amicus companies, but we're also an Amicus cooperative member, and that we're
Maybe
also
you could
very.
explain what that is.
Yeah, sure. So Amicus started off as a buyers cooperative. So it's a cooperative of different solar companies around the country. Right now, it's up to somewhere around 85 different companies, and we jointly purchase equipment. So panels, inverters, various other components. And we use the discounts and perks that we get from that to help fund other activities. We meet up, we collaborate as a group, we'll have a conference here and there, but it's a great community of like-minded solar companies that are mission driven and are really dedicated to providing quality installs, good customer service, and we're all in it for the long haul and for the right reasons. So it's a great group. It's a group that I get tremendous value out of. I know my peers do as well. And it's just kind of another group to work with that happens to be national to help try and combat, some of these issues that we see popping up as solar grows. You just want to try and keep a positive outlook on
Great.
solar as it scales up. So
How does somebody find out about Amicus, and are there certain requirements to join? And
there are, yeah, I don't run the admissions committee, but it's just Amicus Solar Cooperative. If you just Google that, won't be too hard to find. Usually they look for a company to be in business at least, 5 years. I think the average age of the companies is 20, believe it or not.
wow,
So
that's
it's like pretty old school folks
uh-huh.
in this group. We're definitely on the younger side, and we've been around 10 years. But they factor that in for newer markets or kind of niche markets. They don't expect someone to have been around for 20. In the mature markets, like out in California, most of the members have been around for 20 years. Look for a positive track record, financially need to be pretty stable. And, look for generally the owners to be in it for the right reasons. So there's generally a lot of cooperatives in there, like worker co-ops, B Corps, ESOPs, employee owned companies. So we're not any of those things, but we are pretty mission driven and, do a nice profit share with our employees throughout the year. So we're getting there.
That sounds pretty neat. So then you guys, for Amicus, will get better pricing so you can compete against the super large companies that are, dealing with the manufacturers and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, and that was the original idea is that, back when it was formed, it was like a Solar City was big and some of these bigger players were just dominating in terms of cost. So the notion was to kind of aggregate purchasing power to enable, at least a more competitive equipment costs and be able to try and keep up with some of the bigger players. And as it's evolved, so we have obviously access to that kind of scale pricing. pricing isn't everything, of course. And so you want to make sure you've got like a good company and provide a great service. And so it's a nice mix of being able to access competitive equipment cost and then grow with all these other companies on how to market better and become a better installation group. We share best practices on that quite a bit, and great community to be part of.
Great. Okay. And so one other thing that I have on this list of things that we can talk about, and I usually try not to get too political, but preparation tips in anticipation of a Trump presidency. And so I know we were going back and forth about having you come on here probably even before Biden dropped out. So maybe I know that the betting odds are changing constantly, and then it'll probably be another month before we edit and release this podcast. But we've already been through one Trump presidency and it didn't kill the solar industry. So I don't think people should worry too much. I think just in general, regardless of, we're very polarized right now, but just in general, like if you go back over the decades and even centuries, that people put a lot more into who's president than versus what happens than what reality is. And so there's three branches of government, and the president is only one of them. And the economy is more of a world economy. It's not just something that happens that our president gets to control the whole world economy, like a lot of people think. But, there's definitely different angles on this and the Inflation Reduction Act and all that kind of stuff. So, what are your tips in case Trump gets elected president?
Oh boy. I mean, the Canadian market is looking really good. Yeah,
I heard they're going to build a wall on that border and
yeah.
not let us in, right?
As long as it's a solar wall, I think I'm all for it.
That's good.
Uh,
Lots of kilowatt hours.
yeah, we got some can.
And we don't even have to talk about this if you don't want. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm very happy to talk about it.
And you're in New York, so you might have a good job putting some solar canopies on top of Trump Tower, huh?
That would be tremendous. I think I'd retire after I did that. But
Like gold-plated racks
yeah,
to
I mean,
match.
we could pull it off.
Yeah.
So we observed the same thing, like there was a giant letdown, a very depressing day when he got elected last time. But we found that like it did help sales, people wanted to do something to kind of combat what they perceived as a pretty negative outcome of that election. We weathered the storm. I can say that he's not very effective. That was my assessment of all of what he did there, was he didn't really get a lot done necessarily. And so I guess I wouldn't love it, of course, but I'd be pretty confident that not much was going to happen that would harm the solar biz. The fact that the IRA is in law and in effect and dollars are getting out the door and benefiting people, I think it's just going to be super hard to repeal any of that. Even with like the EV stuff, like granted, the US made it that much more difficult to claim the tax credits, but like I just can't imagine that they'd want to spend their entire agenda on repealing, EV tax credits. So it's a shiny object. He seems to be cozying up with Musk, which, seems to be kind of the way to do it if you want to be a right-wing person these days. And I think ultimately not much is going to happen, to be honest. It certainly won't be positive for America. Our business is going to still kind of be the underdog, and we're going to have to continue to rationalize clean energy and solar and why it makes sense instead of being lifted up by a president that believes in it. But I'm cool with that. I think we could ride out 4 years. It won't be as positive as it would have been, but I think our business is just on such a trajectory that it's going to be impossible to stop it. I just don't see that happening. There's people will try, of course. And I think, net metering laws and those types of things are going to be under duress no matter what. But you're right, like president can only do so much. If Trump gets a majority in both chambers, then I think we might need to batten down the hatches a little bit. But even then, he's already had that and he really didn't get much done then either. So
yeah, and it's also like a good part of the economy. And who wants to kill the economy? It doesn't make him look good if he
right.
gets a million people laid off or whatever it would be. So
yeah, it would just be pretty silly. And in Florida and Texas, like not sure you want to be messing with jobs down there.
Yeah. It does kind of amaze me sometimes too, how many people in the solar industry that I run into are even Trump voters, things like that. Like I was actually having dinner with one of them last night, and we debate about it and stuff like that in a friendly way, that it's solar makes money and it makes cheap electricity, and we're not relying upon foreign oil and all that kind of stuff, and military budgets to keep people shipping oil and drilling and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, we'll see
Yeah.
what happens. Who knows who's going to win at this point, but
Yeah, I can tell you we're going to work hard to make it happen
yeah,
so that
great. Okay, good.
he doesn't win.
Yeah, all right. Okay, great. And let's see, so is there anything else that you want to talk about or cover here today?
I guess I've done solar in a number of different contexts, and I would say that doing solar in New York City is like pretty unique, and it's pretty awesome to be able to wake up in the morning and look out, and I can see our own systems from my apartment building. And
Awesome.
as we've grown, our canopies become quite visible. And so it's just really gratifying to have had this vision, 10 years ago, that we could plaster New York City with solar canopies. And then here we are, there are places in the city where you can drive around in almost any block and you'll be able to see one of our canopies out there. So it's like really nice to see the progress, and it's kind of unmistakable when you see one of our systems that it's ours. So
Great.
that's been really, really cool. And we're like super fortunate to have the support of a lot of different communities to make it happen. But very grateful there. And I'm also very, very grateful for my business partners that help, build this thing from an idea to where we are now. There's just no way it would have happened without Galen and Mark and Steve and Joe and Sam and
All right.
all the guys that have make it happen over the.
So how do people find you? Maybe we start off with just the website, where to find the solar canopy, so people can go out there and bring you a couple suitcases of money so they can get some of
Yeah.
your canopies.
So Brooklyn Solar Canopy is just www.brooklynsolarcanopy.com. That has a few different tools to basically price out your own canopy online.
And they buy them just directly from you,
Mhm.
and then they can install them anywhere.
You can install them anywhere. It comes with the engineering stamp, so we should be able to do that. We'll be at RE Plus
Oh, great. I'll see you there. Yeah.
in September, so feel free to jump by the booth. And then Brooklyn Solar Works is just www.brooklynsolarworks.com.
Great.
The electric boat company is Emo Electric, and that's www.emoelectric.co.
Huh. For emo electric, does that mean you have to like paint your fingernails black and stuff? Isn't that like emo?
Yeah, right. We were gonna go with that motif, but
You got to hire like a teenage girl that,
right.
you know?
Yeah, to
So,
be a spokes lady.
uh-huh.
Where we started the business is in East Moriches, New York, and
Okay.
so
Great.
you,
And then how do people find you? Like, I guess, yeah, LinkedIn. So I just found you pretty easy. I put TR Ludwig and there you went, right up there on my
not a lot
LinkedIn.
of us swimming around out there, so it should be pretty easy to find me.
Great. Are you related to Ludwig von? Is he Mr.
No,
Beethoven?
nor am I related to the drum company of Ludwig.
Okay. Yeah. You just have to figure out how to go back far enough.
Yeah, somewhere. I'm sure Ancestry has us linked up somewhere.
Yeah, great. Okay. Well, thanks for being on the podcast. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, great talking.
All right. And thanks for listening to Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. To learn more, go to Solar, SEAN, that's solarshawn.com, and get yourself NABCEP certified, such as the NABCEP PVTS, that's the NABCEP PV Technical Sales Certification, just like TR Ludwig has. And isn't that a great certification?
Totally.
All right. Thanks a lot.